the NI Science Festival and National Geographic have teamed up to bring you this series of online talks with prominent explorers talking to us about their inspiring fields of research, their adventures and stories. And I'm really looking forward to today's Earth Day series. My name is Mark Langtry. I'm a science presenter, a physicist, a former professional footballer, and the head of science and sport here at Explorium. And thank you all for joining us live. And this conversation is live, so I want to encourage you all to think of as many questions as you can. You can put them in the chat box and we'll have time at the end to get to hopefully as many as possible. And I want to give a very special shout out to a few schools who I know are joining us. We have Assumption Grammar, we have Friends Prep, Morning Star and Cork City. So big shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an awesome treat lined up for you for this Earth Day series. I'm really looking forward to it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to marine biologist and National Geographic Explorer, Dr. Giovanni Chimienti. Hi, Giovanni.
Hi, ciao, Mark. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. How are you, Mark?
I'm good. I'm good. And where are you calling to us from, Giovanni?
I am now in Bari, in southern Italy. So it's like Italy, it's like a boat. I am on the heel of the boat.
I think the weather is probably a little bit better down there, probably, Giovanni.
Oh, well, yeah, it's quite sunny. Spring, it's here. So it's good, at least a good news, yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear about your amazing field of research and some stories as well. And I know we'll have lots of great questions coming in as well from the schools. So to kick us off, Giovanni, I'm going to pass it over to you for 10, 15 minutes and you can talk to us about your work. We'll come back then and we'll have a little chat, have a little conversation. I'll have some few questions of my own as well. And then we will be taking note of all the questions sent in by all you guys at the schools, and we'll be answering through them as well. So Giovanni, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sharing my screen so you can see some pictures that I want to share with you. You know, we live on this strange planet, unique planet, which is almost covered by water, even though we call it Earth. And this is one of the sides of the planet that I like the most, the Pacific Ocean, where you can really appreciate how much ocean is important, how much the coverage of the ocean on the planet is massive. And even on the other side, where much closer to our home, so in the North Atlantic, or in my case, in the Mediterranean Sea, you can see how the ocean is really dominant on the surface of the water. So today, this morning, I want to take you to a short trip, to a short journey to the dark side. The dark side of our ocean, of our planet, is the ocean, is the deep sea. Not only because it's dark down there, but also because most of this huge place, it's still unseen. We don't really know what's going down there. Until few years ago, few decades ago, it was thought to be almost devoid of life. It was thought that in the deep sea, which is the greatest habitat of the world, there is no life. It's mostly animals cannot live there because it's too cold. It has crushing pressures, and so very low temperature, no light. But now we know that this is not the case. Even in this condition, which are, of course, impossible for us, there are a lot of animals that lives and thrives down there. And among them, I'm sure you've seen some weird creatures from the deep sea, but among them, surprisingly, we find a lot of corals, like this one. These corals, they live in the North Atlantic, so quite close to your place, and in the Mediterranean Sea. They live in the deep, so we don't really see them on the surface. And we have a huge variety of colors and shapes. We've got white corals and yellow corals. As you can see on the top line, they are very hard, and so they create coral reef very similar to the one you're used to see, for example, in shallow tropical areas. So they create coral reef, but in the deep sea, because they thrive in cold water. They're called, we call them cold water corals. But we've got also, for example, black corals, gorgonians, sea pans, a lot of different types of corals which have a more tree-like shape. They look like trees, they have branches, and so underwater they form this peculiar habitat that are known as coral forest. And is now there is now a huge scientific attention toward these places, because we are realizing that coral forests are very important. They are a key habitat for the functioning of the ocean as we know it, because they are the equivalent of the forest on land. So they create a habitat, a place where a lot of animals can live, can find shelter, can lay their eggs. And so it's now very important to study these places, because as the forest, the corals are the primary builders, the primary constructor of the habitat. But then we find a lot of species living there, which are not just weird or monstrous creatures. Sometimes they are colorful, they are nice, they are, even though they are small, they are very, very interesting. And about this, I want to give you immediately one specific example. A specific example is nudibranchs. Nudibranchs are sea slugs, so they are mollusks, but differently from the majority of the other mollusks, like slugs, mussels, or octopus, or cuttlefish. They are particularly extrovert. They like a lot to show up. They are colorful. They have these shapes which are really telling to the other organisms, look at me, I'm here. And this because they are poisonous. So they are saying basically, look at me, you don't want to eat me, because you will die if you eat me. And these animals, the one that you see here are shallow water nudibranchs, or shallow water sea slugs, that you can see if you go scuba diving or snorkeling, even in our waters. But what's very interesting, it was that in the deep sea, I was studying some coral forests like this one, and I saw some sea slugs on the corals. Well, this is very important for a zoologist, as I am, because I study animals. And for a person who studies animals, the hugest goal from a scientific point of view is to find new species, to name new species, to describe an animal that no one has seen before. And in my case, I was studying these corals, and I noticed this sea slug that was basically eating my corals and laying its eggs on the top of the corals. So basically, I was able to collect it at around 400-meter depth using particular robots. And I found out it was a new species. So I was super happy of this, because as you can tell, this is the greatest moment in the career of a zoologist, a person who studies animals, to find something that no one has described before. I described this species, and this is just one of the many that we can find there. The fact that there are many species down there that we still don't know, it gives us an idea about how still little are the information we have about this place. And in fact, this is a great moment for deep sea exploration. This cartoon is from an Italian artist. It's some Italian humor, but you know, deep sea fish that say, okay, tell me something deep here and now. Here and now, it's not something deep only from a philosophical point of view. Here and now, it's something deep also from a scientific point of view, because this is the best moment in history for deep sea exploration. Finally, we've got technologies like remotely operated vehicles, so vehicles that can go underwater up to 1,000 meters, and we pilot them from the boat. And so they allow us to see live what's going on down there at a greater depth. We've got submersibles, so we can go, if we are lucky enough to use it, we can go very deep with submersibles and look at the animals, collect the samples. So from now on, in 10, 20 years, we're gonna discover a lot of things. I can promise that. And so this is the best period. ever to study the deep sea. The first deep sea pioneers, if you read their diaries, they always regret not to have the possibility to go down there in person and look at the animals in their environment. Finally, we can do that. And so that's a great moment for exploration. And what we're searching for, in my case, for example, I'm particularly intrigued by this beauty. This is a black coral. Well, it's white, and this can be a little bit confusing, but it has something black that I'll show you in a while. These corals, they look like trees underwater. They look like white trees underwater, and can form this huge coral forest that are the place, the home for a lot of fish, a lot of other animals that find a specific, a proper place to live down there. And I'm searching for this forest because they are really poorly known, and we need to know them in order to protect these places. The protection of these specific places is then a strategy to protect the whole ocean. You know, we cannot really protect the entire ocean. So we need to choose some strategic places, some real biodiversity oases where you can find a rich biodiversity, an explosive life. And then coral forests are one of them. And I'm particularly intrigued by these that as I told you, they are called black corals, even though they are white. If we look at these corals very closely, we can see all these tiny flowers. These are the polyps. These are called polyps, and they are the real animal. The animal, the whole coral, is composed of many, many tiny polyps, like this white one you see now. They have a mouth, they have tentacles, and all together they create the colony, which is, as you can tell, an ensemble of hundreds and hundreds of polyps. What is black is their skeletal. When they die and we see the skeletal is completely black. It's black due to a specific protein that they have that makes them hard and elastic at the same time in order to be more adapted to the deep sea environment and the marine currents. And what is nice about this black skeletal is that if you cut it, you can see these growing rings, as you can see it from the trees, for example. But unfortunately, we cannot really use the trees to age these corals, to understand how old they are. Why? Because they can grow really, really slowly. And a coral like the one you're seeing now, which has a diameter of about 2.5 centimeters, it has more than 1,000 years old. It's very old. They grow really slowly, and they can live for thousands of years. So it's impossible to count thousands of growing rings. To understand how old they are, we use chemical methodologies in order to understand how it is growing and how old it is. As you can easily understand, an animal, because these are animals, and animals that lives so much and that grows very, very slowly, it's a fragile one, because if we destroy these places, they are not going to grow again in one day, not even in 1 century. They need millennia to grow again. They need thousands and thousands of years. So you can understand how important it is now to protect what we've got, more than to try, for example, to fix the habitats that we destroyed or to restore. We need to protect what still we've got. And in order to do this, I do a lot of expedition all over the world, and I've done a lot in the Mediterranean Sea, but also in the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes I stay on a very nice big research vessels, but most of the time it's a small boat like this one, a small boat. It may look romantic, you know, this small boat with scientists on board and a huge ocean all around you. It is somehow, it is very nice, but at the same time, it's quite tricky, because this small place, it's your lab, it's your home, it's your gym, it's your wellness center, it's your diving center. It barely has a toilet, to be honest, and there is no shower, I can tell you. but you've got a lot of water all around you, so you don't really need a shower. Anyway, we spent many days at sea, sometimes on this kind of vessel where, for example, I cannot even stand up for days, in some tricky situation, in order to find these places, to discover the last living gardens of black corals. And on this boat in particular, we were using remotely operated vehicles. So I was on the boat, I was piloting this vehicle that went down in my place. And sometimes I was able, after a proper training, to go down myself up to 60-meter depth in order to be down there and to do some sampling and some other measures. And that was probably one of the greatest moments of this research, when I was finally able to be down there at 60-meter depth. It was pretty dark. Here, the picture is enlightened by some underwater lights, of course. And I was finally in front of a black coral. That was the only time, the first and the only time I've been so deep down there scuba diving in front of the corals that I was studying since years. And finally, I was able to scuba dive there, which is very difficult because under this crushing pressure, your brain starts to be a little bit affected by the pressure. And so you don't feel really good. You feel, the scuba divers call it the 3 martini effect, because it looks like you drank 3 martini or 4. And so it may sound fun, but it's not, because when you are very deep, you want to stay focused and you don't want to mess up with things, because every little mistake, it can cost your life. So you need to stay really focused. You need to control your emotions to do your job. But at the same time, it's a great experience. Finally, I was able to collect some samples that I'm still studying now to understand a lot of different parts, different characteristics of the life of these organisms that will still scantily known. But also, it's not always as cool as it is, because most of the time when we go scuba diving, or when we go even deeper with ROVs and submersibles, what we find is a lot of garbage. There's a lot of litter down there. The deep sea is the sink of all the litter from the land. All our waste, in the end of the day, will go to the sea, and all the waste that goes to the sea at the end will sink in the deep sea, where it accumulates for probably forever. On the top left, you can see a picture I took during one of my expedition. I was around 400-meter depth, I think. And that's a plastic bag. It's written on the top, it's in Italian, it's written biodegradable bag, which, as you can tell, it's not biodegrading at all. And it's choking some corals that are easily 500 or 600 years old. This because even biodegradable plastic can undergo the process of biodegradation under proper condition on land. But in the sea, in the ocean, where the temperature is much cooler and the pressure is very high, the degradation process is much slower, or sometimes just doesn't happen at all. And so you can find there a lot of garbage that will stay there forever. For this reason, it's very important to reduce as much as we can the use of plastic and the use of disposable products, because once they reach the ocean, they'll stay there forever. Another impact that we observe quite often is the impact from fishing. Some fishing practice, like trolling, are very destructive. In trolling, basically the boat takes this net on the seabed and just troll it through the seabed, and even one single troll fishing can destroy a coral habitat if you find it. As you can see from this picture, on the left you can see a lush coral habitat, and then on the right the same habitat after a net just passed on it and destroyed it. It's incredible that we still now are fishing with this technique. It's like cutting a forest just to catch some mushrooms. You know what I mean? It's really sad, and this is happening in some places of the world, even in the North Atlantic, even in the Mediterranean Sea. So we're trying to understand those places that are really important in order to avoid fishing practice in these areas. But fishing is not just destroying, from a mechanic point of view, these places. Sometimes fishermen are forced to abandon their fishing gears because they get entangled in stones, in corals, in other obstacles. And so what we find that is very common in the deep sea, there are a lot of lost fishing gears. And these lost fishing gears are made of nylon, made to be durable, made to be strong. And so they will stay there pretty much forever. And they will keep doing their job, which is fishing, even though no one is really harvesting this resource. And so we commonly find lost fishing nets as one on the top, with lobsters and crabs and a lot of fish entangled. We find also long lines, which are other typical bottom contact fishing gears used in the North Atlantic and in the Mediterranean Sea. They get easily entangled in corals, as you see on the bottom on deep sea corals. And last but not least, climate changes. Climate changes which are often difficult to be represented properly, as in particular, it's very difficult to show the consequence of climate changes, of the changes that are undergoing in our climate due to our actions. And to do so, I will ask the support of a friend, another coral, which is the red gorgonian. This coral is incredible. It formed this, it's called a sea fan because it looks like a fan. It's red and it forms wonderful seascapes underwater. They are very appreciated by scuba divers. If you know some scuba diver, they will tell you that this is wonderful to dive in. These corals, they are cold water corals. So if the water gets warm, even of 1 Celsius degree, they can suffer a lot. And what we are observing now is that they are undergoing huge mass mortality events. All these places that needs millennia to be formed, they are just dying in a human lifetime because of the consequence of our actions. So what we are doing is sometimes very far from our eyes, because this is happening down there where most of the people is not even able to scuba dive there, but it's happening. And the consequence of this, the consequence of the destruction of this important habitat will be evident in the near future. But I don't want you lose the hope. If you see here, for example, this is the North Atlantic, so it's where you are. And last year we did a study with a lot of colleagues from the Atlantic area, when we tried to create a model to see what is going to happen in the next 80 years, so in the next generation, let's see. And what we basically saw is that all the places that are now featured by incredible deep sea coral habitats like the one you see on the bottom will disappear within 2100. So in 80 years, basically, they will disappear, or they will be strongly reduced, basically because the temperature will be too high for them. And so the habitat, the place, the seabed, the sea bottom will be not suitable at all for them. And this is very sad. And it's sad to say that during the Earth Day, but this is happening even right now. So we really need to do something about it. And about it, I want to show you this. This is one of the saddest moments in the history of movies, in the never-ending story. Artax, which is the horse of Atreyu, just fall down in the swamp of sadness because it loses the hope. So we don't have to lose the hope. Probably you are too young to know this movie, but I'm too young as well for that. Even though this is really a classic, you should watch it. It's great. We should not fall in the swamp of sadness. We should keep being optimistic. And when you study corals, it's quite hard to be optimistic, because news are rarely good news. Most of the times are bad news. we need to be optimistic. There's still possibility to change this, and what we're going to do is to modify our action toward this. It is plenty of big to small things we can do every day for that, and there are no heroes in that. There will be not an hero that will save us, but it's up to every one of us to trying to, for example, reduce the use of a car, trying to reduce as much as possible the use of a plane once we will be able to travel again, and maybe prefer other ways of traveling which are more sustainable. For example, from a national point of view, when I travel within Italy, I try to prefer the train compared to the plane, because it's for sure less impactful on the climate. And for example, trying to buy green energy, or trying to reduce the consumption of meat or fish, or switch to a vegetarian diet. All these small action, trying to reduce as much as possible the use of waste, of disposable waste. All this small action can make a huge difference. And about that, I want to conclude with a picture that was released today by the National Geographic Society for the Earth Day. Another really sustainable action we can do it, and this is the fun part, is to explore. We have a lot of explore. More than the 80% of the surface of the ocean, of the bottom of the ocean actually, has not been seen, has not been mapped, is not explored. If the ocean is a football field, just consider we have mapped just less than a quarter. We have mapped just this part, and we have seen just the corner. The part of the seabed we've seen is really small. And in this sense, there's a lot of work to do, and there's also a lot of fun to have. So my invitation again and again, quoting another very great, very important movie, is to join the dark side. The dark side of our world is the deep sea. It's full of corals, it's full of life, it's full of interesting stuff that we still don't know. And it's up to us just to do our best to explore it, to know it, and of course, to protect it. Thank you.
Giovanni, thank you so much. That was super interesting, and you really are the definition of an explorer, and so many different points that I'd love to talk about. But one that really struck me most, and I really want to just ask you, is being an explorer, you got a chance to discover a new species and to observe parts of the ocean that had not been observed before. What's that feeling like?
Oh, it's incredible. It's a huge privilege to be there and to be the first person, but at the same time, I feel the duty to communicate this to other people, to show this to other people, not to keep this for me. This great beauty, we need to know that this great beauty is down there, and it needs our help to be protected. At the same time, it's really inspiring. Also for me, it's a continuous motivation. I wake up every morning just thinking, okay, what I'm going to find now. It's great. And most of the time you don't find anything, to be honest. Like, of course, now I showed you my success, but for every day I find something interesting. There are probably 10 or 20 days I don't find anything interesting, but that's the challenge of exploration, and this is great. You need to keep doing it, and you'll be rewarded. I can tell you, I can promise that.
And just like the great scientists, explorers, engineers, technologists, it's a lot of work. Not every day is a success that you share with everyone, but the work that is put in is important, as we've seen from your work. And it's the work that really makes a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great also because you feel you are doing your part, and this is great. I think everyone should do that. As I was saying before, there will be no superheroes to save us, but everyone should do his or her own part. And sometimes it's small action. You don't need to be a trained scientist to be an explorer. You can explore your backyard. Some of the most important black corals, I found them, they are just in front of my university, and no one has saw them before. So you don't really need to travel for thousands of kilometers sometimes to find something new.
So talking about traveling, let's travel back in time a little bit, Giovanni. I'd love to know about where your love for the oceans came from, and what things you were interested in as a young student or young kid.
Oh, well, I grew up quite far from the ocean. So I even learned how to swim when I was already a teenager. I was already 14 or 15 years old. So for me, the ocean was always something very far, very mysterious, something I was not really in line with it. I'm not a marine person at all. And so when I started studying, I wanted to study animals. I've always been fascinated by animals. And when I was at high school, I realized that you can be a biologist and you can be a zoologist. So I said, okay, I'm going to study animals. And when I was specializing in that, I realized that really marine animals were intriguing me because there are a lot of things we don't know. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna overcome my relationship with the ocean. I'm gonna train. I'm gonna be properly trained to go down there and to explore these places, which is mysterious. And I find my way absolutely in this. Now I cannot stay without scuba diving. It's like a need that I have. I need to feel the salt on my skin. It's really neat, and I hope everyone will experience at least once in his or her life this feeling, which is great.
Giovanni, I can see already we do have a lot of questions coming in about scuba diving, and I want to know some things too, but I think we'll get there very soon, because that's something that I think, like you said, everybody should try. And really interesting to hear that you describe yourself as maybe not growing up being a marine person, not living beside the sea, but you developed this huge passion and interest. And it's something that I think we would always encourage young people looking for what career they would like to do, to follow their passion and what they're interested in, and to hopefully make a difference in the world with their work. Was that something that really motivated you to make a difference with your work?
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely, yes. And also, for example, I grew up watching documentaries from National Geographic and looking pictures from National Geographic, and I could have never thought that one day I would have been part of it. I was not even aiming to that because it was too high for my expectation, but I just studied. I just studied a lot, trying to do my part. My way to approach this was to, okay, I'm going to study, I'm going to be an expert of a field in the way that I can give my contribution to that, I can do my part to that. And then suddenly I found myself as a National Geographic Explorer, which is the greatest experience of my life. But the message I want to give you is that it's important to dream high and don't be afraid of your dreams. You can be more or less whatever you want. You just need to work a lot for that most of the times, but don't be scared. You need a lot of commitment. You don't need to be a genius. That's another thing I discovered being a scientist, which is change making. You don't need to be a genius to be a scientist. You just need to work hard. And so basically everyone that wants to study can be a scientist. And it's a great thing that sometimes when you are at school, you don't realize. You imagine a scientist as a super intelligent person that is able to do incredible calculation. That's not the case most of the times. You can be a scientist only if you study a lot. Even if you are a genius, if you don't study, you'll not be a good scientist.
Absolutely, and a really lovely message as well, Giovanni, that you can achieve your passions and dreams really by working hard. And I think choosing something you're really interested in and that you're passionate about is a great way to continue through working through challenges and obstacles. Can you talk to us maybe about some of your greatest challenges or an obstacle that you faced throughout your adventures that really kind of stuck with you?
Oh well, there are a lot of them. I will choose some of them. From a working point of view, for sure, the very deep dive for searching for black corals was the most challenging thing ever. I remember I was with my research team. Of course, I don't do this work by myself, but I have a team with me, and that's very important. I acknowledge them every single day because it's very important to have a great team. And for this deep scuba diving, we had this huge training. And I remember the day before the deep dive, I told to one of the person from my team saying, okay, we are not going to do that. I was a little bit pessimistic on that. And he told me, no way you're going to do this. You can do this. And we're going to do this and we're going to rock it. And so I think that the success of the day after was also due to this great effort from my team as well, and I'm really grateful for that. This is also important to have someone that really encourage you, that stimulates you. It can be your friend, it can be part of your family, it can be your teacher. It should be your teacher most of the times, but in my experience was very important to have someone who actually believed in me, who told me, okay, you can do this. And that is probably the secret for the greatest success most of the times.
Fantastic. And we have there's a lot of training that you would have undergone to conduct your actual research as well. I'm getting towards the scuba diving, Giovanni, if you can't tell, because we have a question from the Morningstar 6 class, and they want to know, how long have you been scuba diving?
And now it's 12 years that I'm scuba diving. I started of course, as a beginner, and then you need a lot of practice. The beginning, it's a lot of fun because you scuba dive in shallow waters, and so even if you do some mistakes, nothing really happens. It's scuba diving is super safe at the first or the second level. It's called open water diver. When you are the first level and you can go up to 18-meter depth, not dangerous at all, and so you need just to be a little bit focused, of course, as everything, but it's something that everyone can do, and so it's a lot of fun. Then I wanted to go much deeper and deeper every day, just because my corals were very deep, so the thing I was interested in was very deep, and I said, okay, sooner or later I'm going to go down there. And so we started all this training, and we use different gas in the tanks, and it's much more complicated, but it's something that comes with time and with practice.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that training as well? Because you said you went down to 60 meters, and as you've explained, the pressure down there can make it quite a difficult environment. Obviously, the deeper you go, the more weight of water that's over you, and that can be tricky and quite dangerous for the body as well. So can you talk to us a bit about the training, maybe the physical training, and then the mental preparation for being in an environment where you are a guest?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Thank you for saying that, because you are a guest in the water. You are not a marine creature. We are not marine creatures. And so we need to feel as guests, even when we became very comfortable with that, in order to be respectful to the environment. And the training, well, scuba diving, it's like climbing. You cannot climb the Everest from one day to the other. You need to go step by step. And at the same time, when you start training, you start scuba diving at 30-meter depth. And then, for example, the day after or 2 days after again. And then the day after you go at 35, and the day after you go at 40. And so step by step, in a couple of weeks, you are able to train your body to the different pressure, because the point is that the different pressures makes you to have a different concentration of nitrogen in your body. And so this high level of nitrogen make you feel sometimes sick, or sometimes like you are not really focused on what you're doing. So you need to give your body the time and the practice to cope with that. And once you complete your training, you can go at 60-meter depth and be focused, be safe. If you do it directly, it's going to be dangerous. But even now, for example, I'm not diving deep since the beginning of the pandemic, so it's more than a year. if today I go at 60-meter depth, it's going to be a mess. So even if I want to go back there now, I need to train again my body for that. It's a process, and you need to focus as well. The mental training is very important, because at that depth, everything wrong that happened, you need to solve that down there. You cannot just go up. And so you need to be very focused. You need to be very confident with your gears. You need to be very confident with your team, because every problem that you can have, and of course the problems happens, you can have a problem with one of the regulators, with one of the tank, you can be entangled in something. You need to stay calm, to stay focused and solve the problems.
Absolutely awesome. Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And obviously you've went down to depths of 60 meters, but you have technology that allows you to go deeper, don't you? So I'd like to hear about some of the technology as well. But first, diving, I'm sure you get to see some amazing things. And the Morningstar 6 class would like to know if you've ever seen a shark.
Oh, well, that's a funny story, because I've seen a lot of sharks. But the first shark and the biggest shark I've been in the water with, I've not seen it. And that's funny, because I was in Bermuda. I was working on corals as usual. So corals are on the bottom of the ocean. And I was taking pictures and looking at the bottom. And suddenly my diving buddy disappeared. I didn't see them, and said, okay, whatever, I will continue working. And once I go up, they said, okay, but did you saw the huge tiger shark that was just around you? And I didn't even see it. So the greatest shark I've been with, I've not seen it. But yeah, other times I've seen smaller sharks, like lemon sharks, white tip sharks, hammerhead sharks, and it's always great. I'm fascinated by corals, but of course I cannot say that I don't care about them. They are wonderful to see. Even sea turtles, for example, or dolphins. Sometimes sea turtles, I've seen maybe thousands of them, but every time it's just an emotion to see a turtle swimming. They look like they are flying underwater. So it's great. They are very elegant.
It's probably a good thing you didn't see that big shark, to be honest.
I would have taken some nice pictures, maybe.
Yeah.
They are not. I just want to point out that they are not dangerous, of course. If you don't stress them, if you don't make them feel in danger, they will, most of the times, they will not attack you. Maybe there are some attack from white shark, the great white shark, and someone that you don't want to meet in the water. I don't too. But the great majority of the sharks, they are not dangerous at all in this.
Great. And what would be some of maybe the strangest things you've seen down in the ocean, creatures wise?
Oh, well, one of the weirdest creatures actually are sea snakes that I saw when I was in Indonesia. In Indonesia, I was scuba diving, and I saw those snakes just moving between the corals, and they are not eels or fish or snake-like. They are actual snakes that breathe. So like sea turtles, they need to go on the surface, breathe, and then they go quite deep also, and they live in the sea. And it was the first time I saw them. It was interesting for me as a zoologist, of course.
Awesome. And you chose corals to be your main focus of research. What inspired you to focus on studying corals at depth?
Oh, well, because suddenly when I began, I was studying the impact of fishery on the seabed in general, and in particular on sharks. Every marine biology starts studying sharks, dolphins, or turtles. These are the three magic creatures you want to study. But then when you became a trained scientist, you realize that there are a lot of scientific issues to be solved, and suddenly you just get in love with some of them. And that was the case with corals, which are, to me, wonderful animals. They look like flowers, but they are animals. They live for millennia. They are very important for the functioning of the ocean. They are voiceless, of course, so they are suffering, but you cannot really feel it. And so I said to myself, okay, I need to deepen in that. I need to do my part. This is my way. It's something you feel at a certain point. I love every marine creatures, of course, but sometimes you feel particularly connected with some of them, and then you find you find your way.
Amazing. And can you talk to us about some of the technology that you use when you're on your expeditions?
Well, the technology is a very important part for science. When we go diving, we use, of course, some of the greatest technologies for scuba divers. We have usually a computer that can tell us the temperature, the pressure, how much time you're spending. So it helps you to do the right thing at the right moment. So the computer told you, okay, look, you're gonna pop up now. It's time to go. It's time to stay, because every minute has to be scheduled when you go underwater. And so underwater computer helps you. But also when we are on expedition, very important technology are the remotely operated vehicles. So those vehicles that we can pilot and that allow us to observe the seabed, to measure the corals, to do a lot of analysis and to collect a lot of data. And last year I was lucky enough to also to be in a submersible up to 800-meter depth, so very, very deep in the Red Sea. And the submersible is the most beautiful technology ever. Unfortunately, it's still very expensive, so you need to be really lucky to have this possibility. But it changed completely my way of thinking at the sea, because you can I was spending 12 hours in the deep sea, so you can spend a lot of time in the deep sea, being really part of that system and looking all around you at the marine creatures, how they interact. And this is really mind-blowing.
Even hearing about it sounds mind-blowing. I can't even imagine what it is be like to see those things in real life. It's absolutely fascinating. So we've talked about life in the ocean, and you mentioned life on the ship, which, to be honest, it sounded like it had challenges of its own. It looked like you said you couldn't, sometimes weren't standing up straight for quite a while. How long would you spend on those ships? And tell us a little bit more about life on that ship.
Oh, well, the maximum I've been on that kind of small ship is 1 month. That is a lot. Actually, when you stay 1 month like that, you're just craving to go underwater, at least because so you can stretch. You know, you say, finally, I'm flying in the water. But it's not a very comfortable situation, but it's the best we've got, because most of the times we try to involve fishermen in this research in the ways that fishermen can feel to be part of this. And so we use fishing vessels modified to be a research vessel, and we need to adopt fishing vessels. Most of the time, barely have a toilet, you don't have a shower, you eat what you've got. But I know it may sound tricky, it is, but at the same time, it's a great human experience. When you are on a small boat, several people, you just have a huge, very strong friendship. You just create very strong links with other people, and it's so interesting also from a human point of view.
It sounds like an incredible experience as well. And we have a question from Lei Lun, that have you had any experience studying or scuba diving in the Mariana Trench, or maybe you have desires to go there?
Oh, well, that's the desire of every deep sea marine biologist. In the Mariana Trench, there are very, very few people that have been there, because the technology and the budget, of course, you need to go there. It's very, very high. But at the same time, the Mariana Trench, which is one of the deepest part of the ocean, doesn't have that much life. And so for a marine biologist, more than the Mariana Trench, which is great, of course, because you can say, I've been in the deepest part of the world, but more than the Mariana Trench, I would like to use this technology to explore much more sites at, within 1,000-meter depth, which is a lot as well, but where there could be a very, like a huge, lush life.
Very cool. And we have a question.
Say, have you been on the Everest? Okay, I've not been on the Everest, but I would prefer to be in a tropical forest, to see a lot of animals. So it's just a matter of point of view, but certainly the deepest you go, the more challenging it is.
Definitely, for sure. And we have another inquiry about the Bermuda Triangle. Morningstar in 6th class would like to know, what about the Bermuda Triangle?
That was a great discovery also to me. I was a student when I went there. I was a PhD student when I went there. Well, the Bermuda Triangle, there's not anything specific. There's just this huge, huge coral reef which grows from the very bottom of the ocean. And so suddenly you are on the open ocean, and at a certain point, the depth goes from 1,000 to 1 meter. And now we have the technology to know where they are. We have the sonar, we have the radar, and so the ships can avoid it. But on the ancient times, they couldn't. And so they just was sinking. We found a lot of shipwrecks there because of this. You have this huge coral wall created century after century from different layers of corals growing like a pillar or like a column in the middle of the ocean. And so you suddenly, if you are unlucky enough to pass from there, you will sink your boat. And that's why in the Bermuda Triangle, you've got a lot of shipwrecks.
Wow.
And of course, storms, you are in the middle of the ocean, so storms are really huge.
Absolutely. Now, for any of our viewers as well, how would you start becoming a National Geographic Explorer? Because if you don't know, Giovanni, that's pretty cool, okay? It's pretty cool. So for anyone watching, how did you become a National Geographic Explorer?
Well, I can confirm it is quite cool, and it made me to meet a lot of interesting people and inspiring people, and I feel really lucky to be part of this huge group of explorers. Basically, National Geographic does some calls. So if you have an idea, if you have an exploration project, if you have something you want to do, you can apply for this. And if they like the idea and they think it's feasible and it's interesting, you just became an explorer. So I just found by chance on the web this call from National Geographic. They do a call every year, except now for the pandemic, it's of course stopped, but it will go back soon. And so I just found this call, and I wrote a project about the black corals. I explained the importance of the black corals. I wanted to find them, and we don't know where they are, and it's important. And they just gave me trust. We were talking about trust. We were talking about believing in you. And I found myself that supported by a society like the National Geographic Society, which is something really cool, really incredible from the exploration point of view. The exploration is National Geographic. And so I found myself supported by them, and it was really incredible.
And you undertook a scientific expedition as part of your National Geographic adventure. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I know you made there's a documentary about it as well, which looks absolutely amazing. I think everyone really should watch it.
Yeah, we did this exploration. We were searching for black corals to understand where they were, and so I set up this expedition, which was difficult to me to lead this group of people because I was also the youngest. So I found myself leading a group of experienced scientists and technical divers, which were maybe all of them more experienced than me, and so it was tricky, but it was also really interesting for me. We were searching for some black corals to see where they were based on our model and our currents, and we end up finding this huge coral forest, which is the largest known thus far in the Mediterranean Sea. So once we were there, we said, okay, no way, we're going to document this. And so we did this documentary, which was not really planned from the beginning, but it was great. And we called it the hidden treasure of Tremiti Islands, because it was in this archipelago, Tremiti Islands, in the Adriatic Sea. And we did this documentary to push for the protection, to show to the decision makers, to politicians, to say, look, we have this great beauty and we are losing it, you should do something. And after the documentary, the documentary was a success, not only because it's cool, I know it's very beautiful, but the point is that we reached the goal, and now they are protecting this coral forest. This would be probably the first coral forest in the Mediterranean where you have a marine protected area for the forest. And so it's a great result for this.
It's absolutely incredible, Giovanni, and work that is making huge differences to our planet and our oceans, and communicating to people the importance of our actions. So that's something that I think that's incredibly inspiring for everyone watching as well. And I'm just curious, What does being an explorer mean to you personally?
Oh, well, to me, I feel somehow empowered, but in a good way, because being an explorer motivates me a lot. Even when there is something I feel like, okay, probably I will give up on this, probably I cannot do this. And then you find yourself that you realize that probably you can do it if you commit a little bit more. So somehow being an explorer, it gives you responsibility, but at the same time it gives you the possibility to inspire other people, to communicate your results. And that's great. You should never be afraid to say to other people, okay, look at that, you are doing it wrong, probably you should do this, I know it. And to talk to other people. Being an explorer teach me a lot how to deal with, for example, with decision makers, with managers, and saying, okay, I found this could be interesting for you, without being afraid to talking, for example, to a person that is older than me, or that is, you know, on a higher level from a political point of view, on a professional point of view. So this is great. In this way, in a good way, it empowered me.
And obviously, as an explorer, by definition, you're searching and you're traveling. Is traveling a massive part of being an explorer? And then, if you had a chance to go anywhere in the world right now to explore, where would it be?
Well, unfortunately, traveling is not the greatest part of the job, even though it's the most interesting and most fun part. But of course, we have the chance to travel a lot, and this is great. I'm never sick of traveling, so I would never, it's never enough to me. I would travel more and more. But anyway, being an explorer means basically to ask yourself some questions and try to find the answer. And so you can be an explorer, really, as I said before, in your backyard. You don't need to travel a lot. If I could travel somewhere, for sure I would be interested to go in Antarctica, which I've never been thus far. I'm not a huge fan of cold places. To be honest, I prefer tropical places. But Antarctica, it's so full of life, and it's so, in some part, unexplored, that my scientific side want to go there. My personal side want to go to French Polynesia and stay there forever. But you know, I have this double, the personal side and then the scientific side. Okay, maybe the cold places are also the one that needs at the moment more scientific effort. So yeah, Antarctica and French Polynesia.
And I love that point you made, that to be an explorer, you don't need to go traveling everywhere. You can be an explorer in your own backyard. I think that's a really cool message to take away, that it's accessible and possible for everyone to become an explorer.
And allow me to add that you don't need to be like a person that does extreme things. You can be a scuba diver, but you can be, we have a lot of explorers which are photographers, actually, which are storytellers, for example, which are teachers. So you can find your own way to explore. This is the great part. You can be an explorer doing whatever you feel you can do it good. And you don't need to do extreme things. You don't need to do epic stuff. The most epic stuff can be just being in your hometown and convince your people to, for example, about the importance of protecting nature. One of the greatest goals, I received several scientific awards during my career, but one of my greatest goals was to receive a very small award from my hometown. So a hometown on the hills, people quite far from the ocean that don't really care about the ocean, that suddenly, thanks to my work, realized, oh my God, our life, even on the mountain, even on the hill, even in the mainland, in the inland, it's related to ocean. And they thank me to say that. This was one of the great success. Sometimes the great success is to inspire people in your hometown or in your home range, let's say.
And you talked about the importance of climate and our changing climate, and you did give some tips in your presentation as well. But we have a question coming in here, that are you optimistic about the future of the oceans and coral reefs?
I am, because you need to be optimistic when you study corals, otherwise you are doomed. So definitely I am optimistic. We are on time. There are some changes ongoing, and it will be worse and worse if we don't do something now. This pandemic is teaching us that we can live without some stuff. It's also teaching us that even the lockdown we experienced it's not enough to fix the situation. During this lockdown, we had less emissions from pollution, but at the same time, we are experiencing coral bleaching mass mortality events. This means that we cannot solve everything. We cannot solve hundreds of years of impact with 1 year of lockdown. We need to change our way to stay at this world. And in this, everyone can do his part, her part, just with very small actions. In this, I am optimistic. I am optimistic that people will understand. They are already understanding, and they will understand more and more the importance how every personal lifestyle can impact on the global on a global scale. So my small everyday actions have an impact on a wider scale, and so this makes you feel somehow responsible of what you do.
Giovanni, it's been amazing talking to you and hearing about your adventures and stories. So I think finally, I just would like to ask you, what's next for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Usually scientists don't talk about future projects, just, but I will. My next step are for sure to continue studying the deep sea. Last year, I started an expedition with a lot of other colleagues and some other explorers in the Red Sea. And for example, I will continue studying the deep Red Sea. I've got a project funded 2 days ago in some Greek islands. So probably next June I will do an expedition on Greek islands for black corals. And then I've got some project in San Francisco. So probably next year I will come in California. I've got a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do. You just need to study a lot, unfortunately, and to be committed. But yeah, I've got a lot of plans.
Awesome, Giovanni. And you're a super inspiring person, and I definitely know that our viewers watching will have picked up lots of messages as well of how they can get inspired to make a difference with whatever they choose to pursue for their career, and that hopefully we can all pull together and make the changes and differences that our planet needs to protect our oceans and the earth, especially notable on Earth Day, and I'd like to wish you a happy Earth Day too. And thank you for taking the time to share your adventures and stories with us. It's been an incredible adventure, and I really look forward to what you do next. So thank you so much, Giovanni.
Thank you very much. And to everyone, just remember that we can do it. We can do our part. It's up to us. Thank you very much.
And thank you all for watching as well. I think that was an incredibly inspiring talk, and there's so much more to do and so much more to learn. So thank you all for joining us for this Earth Day series with the National Geographic Society and the Northern Ireland Science Festival partnering up. And this event is supported by the Department of Education and British Council Northern Ireland, and is part of the British Council's global programme, #Climate Connection, taking place in a run-up to the 2021 UN Climate Change Conference, which is taking place in Glasgow this year. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining, and a massive thank you to Giovanni as well. And I hope you all keep exploring.